Happy Hall of Fame game evening, everybody. Welcome into FFPC Insider Access for August 6th, 2026. My name is Eric Balkman. You may know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, HSFF Hour Extra Reps, and of course, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. You can find me and connect with me on X at Eric Balkman. That's EricBalkman for those of you watching. It's right at the bottom of my screen. And tonight I welcome in my special guest co-host. You just saw him draft in the FFPC Pros versus Joes just a few days ago. He is a 20-year plus experienced fantasy analyst. He's been playing fantasy football for more than 3 decades. You've read and watched everything he's produced at RotoWire over the last 10 plus years, as well as listened to him for the past decade plus on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. You connect with him on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. He is, of course, the aptly named Jim Coventry. Jim, good evening and welcome.
Great to be here. Always a great day to talk football and talking football with Balky. I said off the air to other people, Balky asks the best questions, most insightful, and we always get a great show here.
You know what I always think is interesting, and I think it goes a couple of different ways. Is do not bring that dog on tonight. We're not bringing the dog on. My dog wants to say hi, everybody. That's Tucker. He wants to say hi. Say hi to Jim, Emma. Okay.
Hi.
All right, there we go. Now you need to leave, okay? Because we got hard-hitting fantasy. Yes, you are. Leave. Okay. No, I'm sorry about that, everybody. What I think is so interesting about this, dog interruptions aside, Jim, is I get a chance to, like, Brian Drake was saying this in one of the, from Fantasy Points, was saying this in one of the YouTubes the other night. And he said, "Oh, Eric Balkman, he's totally an underrated fantasy analyst." And I don't view myself as a fantasy analyst at all. Like 100%. My whole thing, every single show I do is all about interviewing high stakes players or interviewing analysts themselves. Jim, the dirty secret about me is I don't I like to produce content and bring on like really talented analysts or whatever. My dirty secret is I just want to be selfish and ask the questions that I need to know for my fantasy football drafts. And I'm asking people like you or high stakes players that have skin in the game or whatever. So that's like, I'm not an analyst, man. I'm just asking the questions that everybody wants to know. And lucky for me, I have you tonight who's going to give the answers that everybody wants to hear.
Let's at least hope that's the case. But if nothing else, I'll be researched out. So at least we know that.
Yeah, exactly. The night is just upon us here. We will be talking with Jim Coventry about everything going on with training camps around the NFL. We'll also find out if Jim is in or out on players like TreVeyon Henderson, DK Metcalf, Justin Herbert, Harold Fannin, and more. And then we will go over in the final segment tonight about Jim's Pros versus Joe's draft. Some surprises there that I definitely want to pick your brain about. And I think to a certain extent, Jim, I've already talked to you about it, but this audience has not seen everything yet. And I think you had some really interesting decisions that you backed up with some analysis. So we'll get into that as well. The FFPC Pros versus Joe's has been completed for 2026. It's a fun thing that we do every single year. 7 drafts. We broadcast 6 of them. We don't stream the slow draft. But each one of those players, 6 FFPC Joes, 6 industry pros in each draft. You're all gunning for 2027 FFPC main event. Those those FFPC Joes were chosen in a random lottery with everybody who had registered for the main event by the early bird deadline. So all of those people are competing for $1 million grand prize. You too, viewers, can compete for $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event. Remember, once you register for that first team, every team you add after that, $600 off. You can compete for $1 million grand prize. It's a very exciting format. It's a very exciting contest. And certainly this could be the year to remember. Who is it? Zales or K Jewelers that always does that? Like, make it a year to remember. This could be the year
December to remember.
A December to remember. This could be a December to remember for people here on playing the FFPC main event. Register at myffpc.com. That is myffpc.com. All right, Jim, without further ado, I do want to give you the opportunity, and we'll talk about this in a second, or we'll talk about this at the end of the show. But you have a discount code that people can register for RotoWire for, and I definitely want to give you the opportunity to promote that right now.
Appreciate that, Balky. For the first time ever, RotoWire has our top football analysts and our rankings live on the site. So if you happen to like my analysis and you think my rankings can help you do a little bit better in fantasy than you're already doing a great job, go to rotowire.com, use the code JIM, real simple, JIM at rotowire.com, 35% off. We don't really give that very frequently, but the powers that be decided that's the case. So let's win our leagues together.
Right. Exactly. That's what it's all about too. And I think the other thing too, in addition for writing all these articles that you're doing for RotoWire, the stuff on your X feed has been fantastic. And it has been for several months, the stuff that you're churning out every single day, these videos. And I would encourage anybody who is looking for bite-sized analysis, they can enjoy just while scrolling. Jim, you make it pretty easy for them to really assimilate a lot of fantasy football knowledge before they draft.
Yeah, Balky, appreciate that. So 7 pieces of content is the goal every day. 2 threads. We always want to get the threads in there, get a little deeper dive. The 2 short videos because some of the audience likes that. Then a couple player stat cards with a couple of nuggets on the bottom of that. And then 5 days a week, I do a 15 to 20-minute live stream. So we should have something for everybody out there, trying to get everybody the best opportunity to, again, win together.
That's what it's all about. I want to bring up here at the top of the show, as long as we're going to get into the minutia here. We got Cardinals-Panthers tonight, man, which is exciting. We have, I hesitate to call it real football, but it is like officiated, timed, full uniformed football that we'll get tonight. And I want to bring this up here to get your feel on it. So we had a report. Oh, man, I'm going to forget now who it was. Might have been Albert Breer. Posted about this, I think late last week or early this week when he was in Cardinals training camp, that Tyler Allgeier was getting all these first team reps, right? Darren Urban, who covers the Cardinals for the official team website, said that Love is not playing tonight in the Hall of Fame game, which is good. Mike LaFleur recently said that not one running back can take all 65 snaps a game. Okay. So I'm kind of curious. There's a lot to unpack here when it comes to Jeremiyah Love. So number one, he's playing on a bad football team. Whether this is a good offensive football team remains to be decided because they by default had to be good last year because the defense was so bad. Okay. Love has fallen. He's not getting the Genty treatment from FFPC players like Genty got last year in the late first round or early second rounds where he's going. Now Love is falling to the third round. I've seen sometimes the fourth round of FFPC drafts as well. But the Allgeier thing is there. James Conner, we shouldn't forget about him. And the track record, Jim, for bad football teams. I was just reading about this. I think it was Brandon Gudula had this for late round. The track record of running backs who are facing over win totals, their teams are facing win totals of less than 7 games. It's pretty rare that you can find a really successful running back in this. So normally I'm kind of like all aboard the Jeremiyah Love train, right? Because I think you're getting a fantastic discount on it. But at the same time, there is stuff to be worried about how he's going to be distributed, his touches are going to be distributed on the field this year, and then what that team's going to look like during the main event and the Big Gorilla Championship weeks, at the end of the season. Is it going to be a Carson Beck-led offense? I don't know. I have to ask how you fall in on Jeremiyah Love, setting you up with all this stuff that's running through my mind about this player right now.
So Jeremiyah Love, and it's the unknowns that are really going to settle this. Jacoby Brissett holds the ball a little bit too long. They do have Gardner Minshew sitting in the wings, and like you said, they got Carson Beck sitting in the wings. Pass protection is important. For instance, we thought coming out of college, TreVeyon Henderson was a good pass protector. He got to the NFL, he couldn't pass protect. He didn't see the field in the playoffs in the late season because Ramondre Stevenson can pass protect. And that's one issue that we have to worry about with Jeremiyah Love. We have no idea if he can pass protect at the NFL level. And not knowing that, it's very problematic because if he can't pass protect, he is going to see very limited receptions, especially when the team's in one-dimensional mode. The Cardinals are going to trail. If they're down 2 touchdowns and they have to pass each down, you could make the case, oh, he'll be on the field. Maybe not, because teams are going to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback, and you're going to need that protection. So that's a question. The other question is Tyler Allgeier last year, he stole 8 touchdowns from Bijan Robinson. He's a goal line factor. And sometimes you don't want the running back taking the beating with all the bodies in the short area. So Jeremiyah Love potentially could lose a number of goal line carries. And you mentioned earlier, if James Conner doesn't get traded, say what you will about him. Last year was the first time he missed more than a couple games in a season. He normally plays 14 or so games. He's been the heart and soul of that team for years. He's been there 5 years now, but complete heart and soul. So that said, can they completely banish him? I know it's a new coach, but the respect he commands in the ability, he still plays at a high level. These are variables. But you did spend the 3rd pick in the draft on Jeremiyah Love, so we've learned draft capital says all. But man, this is potentially complicated, Balky. So I'm not touching him. To me, there's too many questions at that point.
I think that he's the fantasy tease this year. Like you're staring at him in the early 3rd or the mid 3rd, and he's like, "Why in the heck are you guys not picking me?" And I think it's definitely more nuanced than just saying, let's compare him to last year's Ashton Genty. Like it's much more nuanced than that, and I think that you have to get into it further. For instance, who's going around Jeremiyah Love? Like if you're picking a running back, he's going at the 305 in the FFPC Big Gorilla right now, which if you want to play in the FFPC Big Gorilla, myffpc.com is where to go. $350 to enter, $1 million grand prize, 7 bananas promo is live. If you keep randomly getting that 7 pick multiple times in a row, you're going to get free teams there. Live drafts, slow drafts available at myffpc.com for the Big Gorilla. Where do I get this ADP? FantasyMojo.com. Darren Armani puts together the Pros versus Joes challenge every single year. A mutual friend of ours at Fantasy Mojo on X. Of course, he hung out with you, I'm assuming, at Canton just a couple of weeks ago, or 2 weekends ago, or whatever it was. Anytime we cite ADP for FFPC, it's due to his website. So this is what I'm looking at right now, Jim. Running back 13 is Jeremiyah Love. So he's technically, by the numerical numbers, as it were, is not being drafted as a running back 1. He's going at the 305, and there's quite frankly Breece Hall is going right there as well, but then the next running back isn't coming off the board until the end of the 3rd round with Josh Jacobs and Kyron Williams. The running back before that is Derrick Henry, who's still going in the late 2nd round. So if you're in the middle of the 3rd, and maybe you started off wide receiver, and you don't want to take London, Rice, Collins, Nabers, any of these guys that are going in there, Pickens, Olave. Certainly Love and Hall are the 2 running backs that stand out there. In that case, with that build, I could see why people would want to draft for the upside, draft for the $1 million, and take this, player we've never seen, to your point, we've never seen on the field, right? We don't know what his pass pro is going to be like. There's so much we don't know about him, but that can go both ways, right? He could get out there and be an absolute mess with keeping Jacoby Brissett and Carson Beck upright. He could be unbelievable, and he could catch 70 passes this year and rush for over 1,000 yards and get into the end zone a dozen times, in which case he will pay off for that mid-3rd round level. And if you do take receiver in your first 2 rounds and then go with Love in the 3rd, and he pans out, well, now you got a team, as George Costanza would say from Seinfeld. And then in that case, it would make sense for that start and that build. But for the most part, I think I'm kind of with you. I've been fading Love, and I don't necessarily – sometimes I have this FOMO, like the fear of missing out, whatever. I don't necessarily feel that with Jeremiyah Love this year.
No, I definitely don't either. Breece Hall is very, very interesting. And I know we've kind of gotten frustrated with him. I don't know that it's right to do. So there's a yes and no to this. First of all, Breece Hall has averaged 1,453 scrimmage yards over the last 3 seasons. That's a pretty big number. What gets me nervous, and it should get everybody nervous, though, is that last year, Aaron Glenn, the head coach, he came out and he said, this is a committee backfield. And Breece Hall was mostly there, but Braylon Allen, before he got hurt, he may not have got a lot of snaps. Red zone, 3rd downs. I was stunned. What is he doing on the field on passing downs when you have Breece Hall? Why is he in the red zone when you have Breece Hall? But he was. Now, this is where the optimism comes in. Shift to James Cook. Last year, I was out on Cook. Why? Because his workload was too small. He wasn't going to keep up the 17 touchdowns, but they paid him. And this is what I didn't get. When they paid him, now he's getting 300 and change touches. His touches went up exponentially. And so that made James Cook game script proof. Breece Hall just got paid. And look, I don't know that he even wanted to be there, but if they paid him, what motivation do they have despite Aaron Glenn's, screaming and crying about it? Why aren't they going to play Breece Hall if they're actually paying him all that money and they're going to rotate him out? So it's hard to say because the new coach, Frank Reich, loves a screen game and Breece Hall's a master at it. So I think there is risk with Hall, but he still averaged 1,453 yards. So I do think I feel much safer with him. And if they give him the ball, Breece Hall is a legitimate superstar. So if they give him the ball, he literally could be that guy as a top 5 running back because he is that good.
I think with Hall, I'm much more likely to draft him. And maybe this is me just being a guy that or I'm drafting in fear, but I've seen Hall do it, right? Like I've seen him play on an NFL field. I've seen him play on bad teams, Jim, and I've seen him excel on bad teams. So the same argument you can make with drafting Love over or just like drafting Love or Hall, they both play on purported bad teams this year. And so certainly you are taking that risk. But with Hall, man, like I've seen it done before. And I not necessarily, this is not an endorsement of like Frank Reich as the offensive coordinator by any means. But I do think that the improved quarterback play, the fact that they have a threat on the outside, I think it's almost inarguable that when you talk about simply the wide receivers for the Jets and the Cardinals, Garrett Wilson is the best of the bunch, better than Harrison, better than Wilson, better than anybody there. So I do like that. And obviously McBride adds a little bit of an element to take some pressure off Love, but that's a lot of underneath and seam stuff. And whereas Hall or whereas Wilson is stretching the field more for Breece Hall. So I think I shouldn't even say I know I've drafted more Breece Hall than Jeremiyah Love this year. And I've been drafting a little bit more Hall lately for sure. Just to put a bow on this Arizona running back conversation before we move on, Jim, Hanako-san T4V in YouTube said that they had been drafting a lot of Tyler Allgeier in best ball. Obviously, Allgeier was the big free agent signing that Arizona had. And he's getting the number 1 touches in Arizona, or the touches with the number 1s right now. How do you feel about Allgeier, not only from a best ball standpoint, but just what kind of season you think he's going to put up in 2026, Jim?
So they clearly paid him 2 years, $12.25 million. It's not starter money. It's definitely not sub money. It's a rotational back, a good rotational back. But do we think Tyler Allgeier is even moderately good? You could say 3.6 yards per carry, but he did get 8 touchdowns, and those were 1-yard runs mostly, and that could have maybe made a little bit of a ding, but he had 143 carries. But we're looking 2 of the last 3 years, and Atlanta had a good offensive line, but in 2 of those 3 years, 3.6 and 3.7 yards per carry. I don't think Tyler Allgeier is a good running back. I think he's a hammer, and it's okay to be a hammer. I think he's very limited one. Now, he had the bigger numbers, 4.7 yards per carry in 2024. You have those years. When you have a running back that is just a guy, you'll have those years where you spike things up a bit. I still have to say, if Jeremiyah Love can do a little bit of pass protecting, and if they think he has enough lateral agility in the red zone, Tyler Allgeier could get iced out. I get why you're taking him. If James Conner doesn't get traded, James Conner is a better goal line back than Tyler Allgeier. This guy, I think Conner weighs like 231, and we got like a 225 on Allgeier, but Conner is like an established goal line guy as well. So they paid Allgeier, but they paid him before they drafted Jeremiyah Love. So my guess is at that time, they weren't committed to that. So I think drafting Allgeier, it's for touchdown upside. He doesn't have a good offensive line like he had in Atlanta. So Tyler Allgeier is not going to be consistently, if he gets 8 carries, you're not getting many yards per carry in this line. He's not a good running back. And he's capable of catching passes, but what are we talking, 15? So it's not much. You're really banking on touchdowns. But his previous years, 3, 4, and 3 touchdowns. The 8 was an outlier season. So I get why people want to make the move. And if Love were to miss time, Allgeier would have a bigger role, and volume's king in fantasy football. I just think we're going to see who Tyler Allgeier really is in an offense that's probably going to struggle.
You know who he reminds me of, Jim, listening to you talk about him? Michael Turner. Like who was the big Chargers running back, and then he went to Atlanta. And Turner was like I don't think he was ever a first round fantasy pick, but I do remember him going in like rounds 2 and 3 of high stakes drafts. And the problem I always had with him, and FFPC co-founder and my former co-host at HSFFL, or Dave Gerzak, said this: he's an accumulator. I've never heard this term before, but Dave announced it, but I totally agree with him. He's awesome as long as he's getting the touches, as long as he's getting the carries and maybe a few catches here and there. But catches are not a huge thing when it comes to accumulators. It's all about rushing the ball 20 times, 25 times, 30 times a game. And when Turner did that, I mean, dude was threatening 200 yards rushing every single game, right? Because he was so efficient when it came to that. But if he was in these negative game scripts where they were passing and he was only touching the ball 15 times, well, you got nothing from him, right? And I think that Allgeier, with apologies, and I think like if you look at Allgeier, and you just mentioned a lot of the numbers, if you look at last year, God, did he have a lot of touchdowns, right? And if that regresses to normal status, then all of a sudden you're looking at like Allgeier not being the exclamation point that you think you're getting in the double-digit rounds of the draft. He's right now running back 51 at the 1304 in the FFPC Big Gorilla. That's Coleman, Pacheco, and Kamara territory. And I think that's fair right there. Maybe he's a bar, and he could end up being a bargain if the Cardinals, and listen, I will say this about Arizona. I never thought that they would take a running back with the number 3 overall pick for their team when they have so many other holes. But Jim, at the same time, while I understand, I didn't think they were capable of that. I also have to put in my mind in range of outcomes that they're capable of not using Jeremiyah Love properly, that they're capable of not letting him get on the field as much as he can. And if I let that come into my brain, well, then all of a sudden Allgeier looks like a great pick in the 13th round, given that he is not like he has pass catching chops. He can pass protect. And then all of a sudden he looks like a bargain there. So I think the long story short, TLDR, getting the Arizona running back situation is going to be really important for fantasy success this year. You don't want to be in the Jeremiyah Love business where he's getting drafted. Would you at least be open to the idea of Allgeier in the 13th if you are out on Love in the 3rd?
Look, at the end of the day, if Love misses time, Allgeier is going to get volume. And one quick thing, you said the accumulator. My line for Joe Mixon was the great compiler.
The compiler. That's another. They're cousins. Yeah. They're cousins. Yeah.
but yeah. So there is a case for Allgeier. Any running back who sits number 2 in a depth chart definitely has real value. And I still think, look, I know, like I said earlier, Arizona loves James Conner, but there has to be talk that if a team makes any type of an offer, another team has an injury, they would probably do Conner a solid and send him out of town. I don't think Conner wants to end his career this way. I don't think they would want him. He did a lot for that organization, even though he didn't win any games. He did a lot for that organization. So I do think that Conner getting moved is very real, and that boosts Allgeier's value even higher, because if they do clear him out, like you said, there is going to be work in that backfield. Even Jonathan Taylor was only taking 80% of the snaps. There was 20% left over. That is an extreme workload. 65 to 70 is pretty good for a lead back. So Allgeier is in the mix for that. And like I said, even though he hasn't caught many passes, he is capable of catching passes. So that's it. Picking him, they said at running back 51. Yeah, what else are you taking there? Marshawn Lloyd, Jadon Blue, Isaiah Pacheco, who probably is not going to ever be right from that leg injury unless it took 2 full years to heal. So yeah, it makes sense.
Pacheco's the other guy, just not that we need to talk about him, but he's the other guy. His playing style means that he's always going to, that leg injury was awful, but he's going to accumulate more stuff as well, which is why I love Jahmyr Gibbs. And the Lions love Jahmyr Gibbs too, inking him to a record-setting deal today. Congratulations to Detroit and Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay, let's move on. I want to talk about somewhat of a more polarizing running back. If you have the 101 or the 102, Jim, yeah, I don't think I'm going to fight you too hard on Gibbs versus Robinson. But when it gets a little bit deeper in drafts, when we get to that 4th round, Travis Etienne is going to be staring people in the face. And I think this is important that we found out from Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com, who covers the Saints there. This came out Tuesday afternoon. Moody Blues song. NOLA.com said Jeff Duncan is getting, NOLA.com's Jeff Duncan is saying Alvin Kamara is getting, quote, first call on both third downs and in passing situations so far in training camp. Now, Etienne, the prized free agent signing, is getting the bulk of the first team reps on early downs. But Duncan also said, quote, I'll be surprised if it's a Kamara Mark Ingram like 50-50 split when all is said and done, end quote. So to me, here's my takeaway from reading that. I think, okay, Kamara is going to have a role. I don't necessarily know if I love that for fantasy, for drafting him specifically. But what concerns me is him eating into that third down role, eating into the pass catching reps enough where Etienne is no longer a player I'm targeting. Not that I was ever targeting him, but I was fine with taking him at his ADP. Jim, he's running back 19 in the FFPC Big Gorilla right now at the 408. That is before Tootin. That is before Judkins. It's before Montgomery, Swift, Henderson, Irving. Those 6 running backs basically go right after it. I'm wondering how many or how far you'd move him down, or how significant this report is when you think about taking Etienne in the mid to late 4th round. Does this scare you off of him at that price point?
I am scared off, and I kind of was earlier, because you're looking the receivers in that area of the draft. You're looking Jaylen Waddle goes there. Maybe Garrett Wilson's close, Luther Burden, Terry McLaurin. I like that group better than like Travis Etienne. And the problem with Etienne's had a really weird career. 2022, he was a rookie, and he was explosive, 5.1 yards per carry. He caught 35 passes, about 9 yards a pop. It was insane. And then his second year, he did well for fantasy, but his touches went up by about 40, including 23 more catches. So he got it done, but he was far less efficient. That 5.1 yards per carry down to 3.8. He did lose like a full yard per reception. And then 2024 was that lost season where people gave up on him. And then last year was the weirdest of them all. Early in the season, he's breaking off these big runs to the outside, big explosive plays, putting up numbers. And then Travis Etienne went almost silent for about 5 weeks. He was not able, he can't run inside, not consistently. And that's a problem. And then, so he hit that lull, and I was ready to give up on him. And then all of a sudden, late in the season, they featured him as a receiver, and he went off. So he had like 3 different seasons within a season last year. And he scored, 5 touchdowns through the air in his last 5 games. Insane. So when we look at it, who is this player? What I do come down to is, like I said, he doesn't run well inside. The Saints, maybe their offensive line is better. Maybe. I am far from convinced. That line was a bottom-dwelling unit, and they had some injuries. I get it. Left tackle Kelvin Banks looks like he could improve, take a leap up. There's that. Left guard from Buffalo, they brought in David Edwards. He played well in that line. So maybe there's a little hope. But what's the upward trajectory of this line? League average, if it works out? Yeah. That's probably it. And Kamara, like you said, and the reporter said, he's going to be a factor here. And if he's only playing passing downs, he's far less likely to get hurt. He's far less likely to wear down. You could get a lot of bang for the buck out of Kamara just as a receiver. And he can't pass protect, but that'll be kind of the deal. Etienne is a much better pass protector, but Kamara means a lot to this organization. And just like James Conner with Arizona, if he's on the team, they're going to use him. So I think Travis Etienne is a trap. The ADP isn't crazy. It's certainly not over aggressive, but his career has been so weird. I don't think New Orleans is the place where it gets solved and settled.
What happens if in this scenario, let's say Etienne is out, 2 to 4 weeks or something like that, right? Or maybe something more significant, like an 8 to 10 week injury or something like that. What do you think New Orleans does in the backfield? Does Kamara resume his 3-down role, or is it going to be more of a committee with Neal and Miller, if Miller even makes a team?
Kamara, his efficiency as a runner has been garbage for about 3 years. He's gotten like around close to 4 yards a carry, but the efficiency's been cratering. And now we're talking about a running back who really has hit the wall age-wise. 31 years old, just turned that about 8 to 10 days ago. And so I don't think the team can responsibly give him a rushing workload. And remember, I talk about this all the time, Balky, age and injuries. When you start seeing a player getting nicked up most years, it's a problem that has to do with age. And last year, Kamara missed the last 6 games of the season. This doesn't go away. Your body's taken such a beating over the years. That's what it ends up being. So I don't think the team can responsibly give Kamara more than 5, maybe 7 carries a game in any situation, because they just have to put other people in because he will break down.
I want to talk about the New England Patriots here. This is another team that is in flux, despite being in the Super Bowl and the AFC champs last year. There's been differing reports coming out from A.J. Brown's presence in New England Patriots training camp. Andrew Callahan covers the Patriots for the Boston Herald, said that it's been noteworthy about A.J. Brown's struggles downfield. We had, I think, Tuesday, a report saying that Kayshon Boutte has been the star of Patriots training camp. Chad Graff, who covers New England for The Athletic, reported that. And then we get Paul Perillo. Now, granted, Paul Perillo writes for the Patriots website, so he works for the team. So he is going to be, like, anytime. I think, like, you always have to consider the source, obviously. And then you, like we were talking about Darren Urban earlier. I know Wes Hodkowitz for my location here in Northeast Wisconsin, covering the Packers for Packers.com. Mike Spofford is another one. You will see the positive spin on how the team wants these writers to spin what's going on. Paul Perillo from the Patriots website, again, I'm assuming he's a Patriots employee writing for Patriots.com. He said that there's been serious signs of life since the pads came on this past Thursday morning between A.J. Brown and Drake Maye. There was a spike. I was surprised, Jim, when I saw this after the Patriots trade went down. I know I operated all drafting season assuming Brown was not going to be an Eagle and probably was going to be a Patriot. And then yet still after that trade went down, and Brown moved from Philly to Boston or thereabouts, he still had a spike in his ADP. Like, we still saw it move up. We are looking at it right now in the FFPC Big Gorilla as wide receiver 7 currently at the 209. He is going ahead of London, Collins, Rice, Nabers, who Nabers might chase him down. Nabers might be and we'll talk about Nabers, but he could be this, like, derby horse that's a slow starter and then just closes like you wouldn't believe, and ends up being a first-round pick before the season starts. But I want to get back to A.J. Brown here. So you see where he's going at the 209. You want to draft him this year in the FFPC Big Gorilla competition. You're going to have to soak a late second-round pick into him. Is that a price that Jim Coventry is willing to pay? And what do you think he does this year for the Super Bowl runners-up? It usually hasn't been great for them the following year, but maybe A.J. Brown would be this nice little kick to their offense.
Drafting him as much as I want him is a difficult proposition. In the pros versus Joes, I know we're talking about it later, but I was in this exact spot. So in my first round, I took a running back to be named later. I don't want to spoil the show for later. But in the second round, I went with this. I had a choice. I could have taken A.J. Brown there, but I saw Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And I wanted a second running back there because I really think Barkley will snap back. So my choice wasn't A.J. Brown or a receiver. It was basically, do I want a running back? And in that group, and I thought the fall off at running back was worse than the fall off at receiver. That caused my pick. But if I'm in an auction league, which I was in the Kings Classic auction league a couple of weeks ago, A.J. Brown was a target, and I secured his services. Now, to answer your question about what we can expect, I think we can quantify a lot of this. First of all, the early downfield struggles, downfield's a timing game. And Drake Maye is a great downfield passer, and A.J. Brown is a great downfield receiver. But when you're working with a new quarterback, after working with Jalen Hurts for all that time, it's just a different timing. It's just a different expectation of how the ball comes in. Everybody has a little different touch on the ball. So A.J. Brown is very accomplished. That's going to get fixed. That is not even a concern. And I know Kayshon Boutte, as you noted, already had that downfield chemistry. So that just goes right back into place. So, but to A.J. Brown, I want everybody to know this. Yes, last year in some ways was a lost season for A.J. Brown. And I know everybody remembers the drop pass against the 49ers in the playoff game. But I want you to know that he wasn't getting the ball. And of course, he made everybody miserable. But in the last 7 games, I think everybody forgets, A.J. Brown was on his usual pace, 114 catches, 1,445 yards, and 10 touchdowns in the last 7 games. That's A.J. Brown. Now, he didn't get it the year Saquon Barkley ran for 2,000 yards because they were not throwing the ball in the second half of games. They were literally crushing opponents and not passing. But that's who A.J. Brown is. And when A.J. Brown comes over to New England, this is another simple calculus. Mike Vrabel coached A.J. Brown, and they didn't get along that first year. But after that, they've been close friends. They understand each other. Mike Vrabel knows if I bring over A.J. Brown and I'm not going to give him the football, I'm going to ruin my locker room. He knows that. So there's no way A.J. Brown's not coming in and getting targets. And the second part, you got Coach Josh McDaniels. I'm not comparing these receivers. I'm making a point. 2007, Randy Moss comes over to the Patriots. And Balky, the fantasy community was insane. They're like, oh, well, they spread the ball around in New England, Randy Moss. And I'm like, you're nuts. I got as many Randy Moss shares as I possibly could because I'm like, Randy Moss is going to do this with his hand. And Tom Brady's not going to say, oh, I'm going to check it down to this other guy over. That isn't going to happen. A.J. Brown is a superstar receiver. He is not washed up. That knee thing is overblown. He's not Randy Moss. He is getting the ball. And you mentioned the schedule. You mentioned last year. Cupcake of all cupcake schedules last year. This year, it's a little below average. They're going to trail. They're going to throw. A.J. Brown is going to have a memorable season for you.
Randy Moss went to the Patriots in 2007, and it was before, like I was doing a little high stakes stuff, beg your pardon, but I wasn't doing a ton. And I had this long time like home auction league, Jim, and we were having the auction, and this guy in the league who like was hit or miss. Sometimes he was really good, sometimes he was really bad. He nominated Randy Moss for $20. Right. And this is when like everybody was down on him. They didn't know if he was washed. Crickets. He got him for $20. And he was like, he said after, he's like, oh, I love this. I love this. Randy Moss for $20. Are you kidding me? And nobody said anything. We're all like, dude, that was horrible. And you know who was laughing at the end of the year? He was, because he won the league. And Randy Moss for $20 was an insane play. I'm wondering what your prediction is on Boutte specifically, because obviously Kayshon Boutte not in a Patriots jersey this year would be awesome for both AJ. I almost said Randy Moss would be awesome for AJ Brown and Romeo Doubs. I'm wondering if you think he is on the team come week 1, or if he is traded to somebody else.
So I think the commodity of having Kayshon Boutte is too good for the team to trade him. It sounds like something a fantasy football manager would consider. You know, fantasy football, you're going to trade him because there's nowhere to go. But there's no upside. 6th round pick in 2023. I mean, they're probably paying him next to nothing. So what motivation would they have to trade him, and what would they honestly get in return for him? He caught some deep passes last year, but it wasn't like he was crushing the league. 551 yards on 33 catches. So I don't think anybody's saying Kayshon Boutte is the solution to our problem. So I don't think a trade is happening. What I do think will happen is this. First of all, obviously there's gonna be a lot of 2 down sets. They draft Eli Raridan. We know already that Coach McDaniels loves 2 tight end sets, but they brought in fullback Reggie Gilliam, and that's not a quiet signing. That's telling me they're either going to go 2 tight ends or they're going to go a fullback and a tight end. So that means 2 receivers on the field. That's why I bring that up. It's 2 receivers on the field, and that's it. Kayshon Boutte will rotate in. A.J. Brown will sit a few snaps. Romeo Doubs will sit a few snaps. But when they go to 3 wides, this is easy. A.J. Brown kicks into the slot. A.J. Brown is so dangerous with the ball in his hands. And if the verticality of Boutte is on the sideline, defenses have to respect it. They already know from the film. They can't just let him get on the sideline because Drake Maye will cook him on that. And so A.J. Brown's going to get some crossers over the middle, and good luck to the safety that has to tackle him after he catches the ball. So I think I think the Kayshon Boutte role is really, really important because him being a field stretcher in 3 receiver sets, that really opens up the playbook for Josh McDaniels on passing downs.
I think I mentioned this too. JJ Zachariason was talking about this. There was a video of AJ Brown dropping a pass over the middle recently, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is bad news." AJ Brown and JJ was kind of like, "Oh my God, the Patriots having him run crossers over the middle. AJ Brown, this is going to be fantastic." So it's a buying opportunity certainly for him. Dynasty, I think it's a little bit nerve wracking. I just traded him, Jim. Let me ask you this, and I've asked several people about this. I actually just traded AJ Brown in a dynasty league, and I got back a 2027 first, DK Metcalf, Juwan Johnson, and Omar Cooper was the other one. And I was kind of looking to get, like, my team is a little bit older in that league, and I was looking to get a little younger. I know normally you like to get the best player in the deal, but I feel okay about that trade.
The deal definitely works. AJ Brown is 29. I'm usually confident a receiver is going to continue to play at a high level until 31. Now, there have been knee issues. I think it's over-reported. But if it gets worse, I mean, he could flame out fast. Yeah. So that could shorten his career. Even if it's not like a massive deal this year, it could shorten his career. So I think getting out on AJ Brown for the package you got, I do think it makes sense. If somebody's in a win now window this year, then I think you definitely want to keep AJ Brown. But if you're definitely building on, continuing to build, you're looking out to the future a bit, it is the best time to sell. Now, honestly, what I think the most optimal time sell would have been week 3, but you're not getting the same deal because I think after a couple of weeks, and he has a couple of big weeks to start the season because they're going to get him the ball early. Maybe that's a little. So if you're rostering him and you're watching this right now and you want to trade him, let him start the season. But your deal works out fine.
Yeah, and the other thing too is it came late on a Friday night when I thought there might have been some alcohol involved. Yeah, so I was like, I think I might have to make this deal here. We're talking with Jim Coventry from RotoWire here on FFPC Insider Access tonight. All right, dude, let's get into this Malik Nabers stuff because this is exciting. This is why you draft early, right? You think about all the deals that people got on Nabers in the 4th, sometimes 5th rounds of the FFPC Big Gorilla and Main Event. Dan Dugan, who covers the Giants for The Athletic. The latest we've got on this was earlier this afternoon was that Nabers participated in some walkthrough periods against the defense today. Dugan says there was a little bit of a scare. Tyler Nubin, the safety for the Giants, got kind of close to Nabers on a swing pass today, but I guess everybody came out okay. Nubin's fine, Nabers is fine, or whatever. And Dugan says that he thinks Nabers might join the live team periods next week, which would obviously be awesome for the Nabers owners and for the people who are drafting right now and deciding what to do with Malik Nabers. This is wild, man. I go back to the FFPC Big Gorilla. Actually, I'll do the FFPC Best Ball Tournament for this one, for the ADP. Over the last 3 days, we have seen Nabers ascend all the way up to the 303 on average. Now, he has still been drafted, Jim, in this format in the mid to late 2nd round within the last 10 days. So we have seen, like, it was wild. He started off early as like a round 2 pick, sloughed off round 5 mostly from June to late July, and then he started picking back up late July again. He went from the 6th round to the 5th round to the 4th round. Now most of the time he's in the 3rd round, but we have seen him sneak into the 2nd round as well. By the way, FFPC Best Ball Tournament, just give you a shout out on that. $400,000 is the grand prize this year. Last year was $300K. We increased the grand prize to $100K. You can get in now for $125. Live drafts, slow drafts, 2 hours, 6 hours, as well as sit and goes available for the FFPC Best Ball Tournament at myffpc.com. Where do you sit on Nabers currently? Is he worth that early 3rd round pick? Is he worth maybe perhaps a late 2nd round pick, Jim? It's difficult. We're trying to weigh like what we have seen the majority of this offseason with just the snippets that we've seen so far in training camp, which have been very positive. We don't want to get over our skis on this, but sometimes with a player of Nabers' talent, it's difficult not to get super excited and overdraft this guy.
If you're picking in the early 3rd round of your FFPC draft, there's a decent chance that you're presented with the options of Nico Collins, Malik Nabers, George Pickens, or Chris Olave. That's the bucket that you're picking in. I get the optimism and the excitement behind Malik Nabers. He had a setback in April. I mean, throughout the preseason, he had setbacks. He has yet to be running the way they like him to run. There's still a world where once they do, a further setback continues. Oh. This isn't cut and dried. I think we automatically want to assume that a player coming back from an ACL, all right, 9 months, and the player is good to go. Not every time does it happen. This has not been a clean recovery. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're out of the woods. Like I think you're intimating, though. You're talking best ball. And if you want to take down a large field tournament with a huge paycheck, then that payday, Malik Nabers has an unreal upside because we've seen him in the 140-ish target range. That is squarely in play if he's on the field. And for that, and for the talent he is, and even if he starts out a little slow, and by week 6 he's full Malik Nabers, at that time you are getting a steal because he is a top 6 or 7 type receiver when he's at the peak of his powers. So you are getting a discount. Is wide receiver 11 to wide receiver 7 a massive discount? Not necessarily, but in the bucket of receivers, Nico Collins misses time every year. He had 2 concussions last year. I do love George Pickens. I would take Pickens over him because let me segue for a second here. George Pickens, and I said this last year, Balky. We remember when Michael Gallup had 1,100 yards in 14 games with Dallas. And I said back then, I go, Gallup is the type of player that fits Dak Prescott's skill set perfectly. And then they brought in Pickens. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Gallup times 10 because this is the same skill set, intermediate, downfield, the boundary at times, the red zone. And we saw it last year, 1,400 yards. And now Pickens signs the franchise, is good with it, and he's going to be playing for life-changing money. So every motivation to be on point all year, and the team's going to move him around. So as much as Nabers has that upside, the ball's going to Lamb and Pickens. It's not going around too many other places. Mm-hmm. So I think Pickens has a similar, maybe a little lower floor than what a fully healthy Nabers would have. I don't know if the ceiling's much different because Pickens, that may not be close to the real ceiling for him.
2 follow-up questions on what you just said, Jim. Number 1, who's the better fantasy value in FFPC drafts right now? George Pickens at the 305 or his teammate in Dallas, CeeDee Lamb, at the 202 in Big Gorilla drafts? Who would you rather pick there?
It's definitely Pickens. And we go from week 11 on last year. Targets were the same. Pickens had about 10 more yards a game. Pickens had a slight bit of an edge on the touchdowns, but they are getting the same amount of work. And Pickens is outside the top 10 receivers. Lamb is a wide receiver 5. And I know depending where you're drafting, it may not matter. Mm-hmm. But if given the 2, I would rather have Justin Jefferson over Lamb all day long. I'm still saying everybody's punished the Vikings for J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy did not belong on an NFL field. Carson Wentz, and I think I told you this on the show when we were on last time. With Carson Wentz, it was like 5 games. Jefferson averaged with Carson Wentz, I'm repeating this, 7 catches for 95 yards. Those are Jefferson's career baselines. He's a 1,600-yard receiver. He had 1,530 with Darnold and 10 touchdowns. Kyler Murray, you might not like him, but he's at least as good as Carson Wentz, and I still say he's at least as good as Sam Darnold was. So Justin Jefferson, so when you give me that choice, I can't take Lamb if Jefferson's on the board, and then Pickens is in a different section after the turn. And so Pickens is clearly the preference over Lamb for those 2 reasons.
CeeDee Lamb turned 27 this past year. At the time, past April, excuse me. At the time the NFL commences next year, he'll be 28 years old. I don't think that's too old for a wide receiver or whatever. But I do think that George Pickens stands a decent opportunity, having a decent opportunity of signing a long-term deal with the Cowboys, right? If that happens, and dynasty owners, Jim, want to get ahead of this, is CeeDee Lamb a guy that you would sell for 90 cents on the dollar right now, 85 cents on the dollar perhaps, knowing that this could get worse before it gets better, especially if Pickens signs this massive deal in the offseason after this year, has another great year. All of a sudden, we're talking about CeeDee Lamb being the number 2 there, which seems weird to say, but it's definitely in the range of outcomes.
So Lamb is on a 4-year deal. He signed in 2024. So that means 2027, next year is the last year of that deal. So if they do sign Pickens, you're right. It could move on from CeeDee Lamb because you often can't afford 2 wide receivers without completely cannibalizing your roster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not throwing any shade on CeeDee Lamb here. I want to just circle back and point out, I said Justin Jefferson is better than Lamb. So understand that, first of all, Justin Jefferson is tied with Jamar Chase as the best receiver in the game, in my mind. Full stop. They're tied. They're different players. You could throw Nakua in there. So that wasn't shade on Lamb. But like you're saying, given this dynamic, they are co-number ones. And I point out earlier from the bye last week on, they were the same targets. So they are both going to eat in this offense. It's just that Pickens is the better red zone presence, and he is getting, at this point, more explosive plays. Lamb still has drop issues. It's not huge. It's something. Lamb's had his touchdowns go down 3 last year. I know he missed 6 games, but 3. Pickens is going to be the preferred red zone guy. So I do think dynasty players, as you're intimating, I think Pickens is the way to go here. Now, there is concern when look, I don't know George Pickens, and I don't want to say this or that about a player, but we heard in Pittsburgh, there may have been motivation issues. If the people in Pittsburgh were correct, and if Pickens gets the contract, I think George Pickens is a wonderful human being, and he may not even think it is, but if the Steelers' rhetoric was right, is there a world where once he's set, he backs off? There was talk last year. Dak Prescott said there were 2 30-yard games out of Pickens, and he was kind of mentioning that he didn't seem like Pickens was totally into it. It wasn't 30-yard games. I got the wrong screen up here, but I think it was a pair of 30-yard games, and it was like week 14 or 15. So there is risk based on the Pittsburgh experience with Pickens. It was 37 yards against Detroit and 33 yards against Minnesota. So there's risk, but man, the ceiling is insane. I said Pickens when he was drafted. I said he was the best talent in that wide receiver class.
Yeah, and I don't remember a lot of people fighting you on that. Like if you want to not draft him, if you're an NFL team, if you want to not draft him, if you are a dynasty owner because of other stuff other than his talent, I totally get it, right? But his talent, chef's kiss. Last thing I'll bring up, and I know this started with Nabers. I want to circle it back to Nabers. Who would you rather draft right now, Jim, between Malik Nabers and Devonta Smith? Smith, who is also dealing with a hamstring injury, as is his real-life teammate, Mekhi Lemon. The FFPC Big Gorilla ADPs on these guys right now, we do see Malik Nabers moving up to the 304. Devonta Smith is at the 308. Nabers is wide receiver 11. Devonta Smith is wide receiver 15. Where would you weigh in on just, again, redraft, manage format? Would you rather have Nabers or Smith in 2026, Jim?
I was very biased against Devonta Smith because of his size coming into the league. 6 foot 170. If he was like 5'10", 170, that's a little better. But he's so lean. But yet, he pretty much has been on the field. He did miss 4 games in 2024, but otherwise, he's missed 1 game in the other 4 seasons. He's been durable. Now, the targets have been limited, and he had that 1 year in 2022 where he had 136. Normally, he's in the 110 range, so he hasn't been overused. But the thought would be with A.J. Brown gone, and we really don't know what Mekhi Lemon is yet. I think he's a slot, and if he is, there may not be a lot of quote-unquote slot snaps. I think Devonta Smith has to get 140 targets, and he did hold up to that once, and he just missed 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns, 95 catches. If I got that season out of him now, that's a great floor. And again, back to Nabers, if I'm playing to win a jackpot and I want to go for the upside at that point, then you take Nabers. I see Smith as an extremely reliable and high floor play, and the floor is not bad. But okay. I would look at him that way.
So Jim, not to put words in your mouth, if you're drafting in the FFPC Main Event or FFPC Big Gorilla, you're probably leaning towards Nabers. If you are in a closed 12-team league, which the FFPC offers as well, you go with the safety at that point and take Smith over Nabers.
Yeah, and that is a discussion. And you're right, you have to qualify by league. When we're doing FFPC and we're playing for a grand prize, it has to come into the equation.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense as well. Jim, I knew this was going to happen. We're almost an hour in, and I've gotten to like 20% of everything I wanted to talk with you about. But we're up against the break. I want to take a break right now. When we come back, I want to pick your brain on who you're in and out on this year. Players like Chega Okonkwo after the Stephon Diggs signing, players like Mike Evans after the hamstring injury. And then, of course, we'll lead it off when we come back from break with another guy dealing with that substation in San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey, a guy who I think is paramount in first-round discussions this year, and we'll figure out where Jim Coventry from RotoWire is on that. I'm Eric Balkman. You're watching FFPC Insider Access. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after these messages.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm, and guess what? The Big Gorilla is back over at FFPC. This contest has $5.8 million in prizes and $1 million up top to the winner. And it's got a pretty reasonable buy-in of $350, access to the high stakes community where the best players play in all of fantasy football. You go out and you win a contest like this, and people are going to remember your name. The FFPC Big Gorilla open right now, and $1 million coming home with you. And if you buy 3 teams right now, you get $50 back off the buy-in. You're going to want to buy multiple buy-ins to this contest because they also have the 7 bananas giveaway if you get the 7th pick multiple times. Check out the details over at myffpc.com on that, but you can get free best ball entries, free entries into the main event, which is a $2,000 buy-in contest, and possibly even, believe it or not, a jungle safari or $50,000. Your choice. I'm picking the safari. So go to myffpc.com, use promo code ALARM if you're a first-time player. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can get involved. And you know what? They also listened to you guys and added one more contest, the Baby Gorilla. Can't do $350? Why not do $125 buy-in, $100,000 grand prize, $675,000 prize pool? They have something for everyone over at FFPC, where the best players in the world play fantasy football.
This is FFPC Insider Access. It is 7:58 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm joined by Jim Coventry from RotoWire.com. Literally minutes from the start of the fantasy football season with Mike Tomlin joining Football Night in America on NBC. What do you make of Mike Tomlin, Jim? That's going to be weird seeing that guy behind a desk this year without a headset on.
The last time I remember, we got the benefit of the Tyler Loop field goal attempt at ball. That was Sunday Night Football. So, he goes from a great moment to another great moment. Yeah, I mean, it's great. Love Mike Tomlin. I'm sure he'll be fun to watch. It's funny when these games are on, especially like the primetime games. I'm watching them with the sound off because I'm working. I'm getting ready for all my crunching of my numbers and all my analysis. So, yeah, I rarely get to listen to a game.
I'm kind of with you on that. Like, I had a local sports talk show in Northeast Wisconsin for years. And my co-host was always talking about announcers and what have you. And I'm like, I can't really tell you, like the majority of the time, I knew the Sunday night guys and the Monday night guys because I'd have the sound on for that. But I'm red zoning it on Sunday. Like, I don't pay attention to what people are saying. It's weird. It's a weird dynamic. And I think I think I still prefer listening to the announcers when I can, Jim, because I do think there's stuff that I don't pick up on if I'm just simply watching it, or I don't understand what's going on because I'm not hearing what they're talking about. But that's neither here nor there. This is a conversation for the regular season. Let's get into the drafting season portion of the program. Jim, I'm going to hit you up with as many of these players as I can. Tell me if you are in or out on these players at their current ADP. Christian McCaffrey will lead things off tonight. The Big Gorilla ADP for him is running back 3 at the 106, a player who crushed it last year, who destroyed his ADP, and yet we are concerned about the volume that he had last year. that has to weigh in on whether we're taking him in the mid-6th round. I'll preface this by saying, Jim, I've drafted him like twice. I'm very nervous about what 2026 looks like for him. The last 2 times he went over 400 plus touches, the next year did not turn out well for him. And I take McCaffrey now as like, I should draft him at least in a couple of spots just so I have him. But if I'm drafting one team this year, I'm out on Christian McCaffrey. How do you feel about him?
I am out. And again, I'm shutting my mouth. I'm not going to spoil the rest of the show. You have a question later. You're going to ask me about a player. There's a running back I have ahead of Christian McCaffrey, which is why I'm not taking him. But to kind of sum up what you're saying with McCaffrey, first of all, as a runner, he is not the same anymore. The 3.9 yards per carry, below 40th percentile in broken tackle rate and yards after contact. People say, oh, they're loading the box. They've always loaded the box against them. So, I mean, it's apples to apples. But here's the thing. And you kind of brought this up. Twice in his career, he's had heavy carries, over 245. He had a 287 carry in 2019, 272 carries in 2023. In the following season, he played 3 games and he played 4 games. Maybe it was bad luck. Maybe it was just bad luck in terms of injuries, and it's possible. But he had 40 more carries than he had in that biggest 2023 season, 311 of them. And now he's 30, and the running part of his game has declined. Can he still catch 100 passes? Yeah, maybe he can do that, and that would be great. But there are some red flags. And even though it's small sample, those 2 seasons where he couldn't come back the next season at full capacity because of injuries, I can't take that chance.
Yeah. I'd be fine with it if it was later on, right? Where I can afford to miss on my 3rd round pick or my 4th round pick. Can't afford to miss on my 1st round pick. And certainly if he does hit in those couple leagues I've drafted him in, I'll be very excited to see what happens. But by and large, I'm kind of out on him as well. Rob Domofsky, who covers the Green Bay Packers for ESPN NFL Nation, their ESPN franchise reporters, said today that Josh Jacobs was not going to practice because of a groin issue. However, it's not believed to be a long-term concern. Chris Brooks, who is a player that a lot of people have been drafting early on in the process with FFPC drafts, Jim, is on the NFI list. But he's expected to return shortly. And as a result, Marshawn Lloyd is getting a lot of run, which is great because every day that Marshawn Lloyd ends not injured is a good day in my book. Specifically with Jacobs, we have the legal stuff off the field that we don't know what's going on. We know that the stuff happened with him with the domestic complaint. This was probably, good Lord, it's probably going on, oh boy, 10 weeks, 11 weeks now that this happened, and he's not been formally charged yet. Drew Davenport from Football Guys, I know probably another guy you hang out with at the Expo in Canton for sure, said that he's believing that if this is going to be an issue, it's going to be more of a 2027 issue rather than 2026. So as a result, we've seen Jacobs rebound a little bit in ADP, but maybe not as much as you'd think. Jim, are you in or out on running back 15, Josh Jacobs in the Big Gorilla at the 311 right now? Are you in or out on that price?
I do like Josh Jacobs. I am finding I'm taking 2 running backs early, and with that spot where Jacobs goes, I'm taking a wide receiver, which is why I have no shares at this point. The way the board sets up this year, to me, it sets up the running backs, the receivers, and that 3rd and 4th round are really, really good, and they have less questions than the running backs. So that's the way I'm going. I am not, though, fundamentally opposed to Josh Jacobs in any way. And I will point out, last year for fantasy, he was getting it done early. He was scoring a bunch of touchdowns. The yards per carry were down. The line was terrible. And I don't know. The team is talking up the replacements, the people that are taking over. Elkton Jenkins is gone. And Rasheed Walker is gone. They're gone. I am not optimistic the line's going to bounce back. But what I am excited for about Jacobs is Jacobs has caught 36 to 37 passes in each of the last few years. Emmanuel Wilson's gone. And I know Chris Brooks can catch the ball, but he's a bigger running back. I think Josh Jacobs could be much more heavily utilized as a receiver this year out of necessity, and he's very good at it. This could be the year we get Jacobs with 50 catches. So even if the line isn't doing great, I think we could see Jacob subbed out more on some of those grinder carries, and maybe he sees more work on passing. Now, it's speculation, but I think those puzzle pieces make sense to me. And he's typically, Jacobs, a more durable player. Missed 6 games in 3 years. That bone bruise limited him last year. But that said, Josh Jacobs around the goal line is money, and it probably continues to be that way. Jordan Love isn't going to be stealing touchdowns from him there. So I do think that loss of Emmanuel Wilson, I do think that helps the PPR value of Jacobs. So I definitely have no issues if I need a running back at that spot, taking him there.
I will say this about the offensive line, as long as you bring this up, and I think this is important to discuss because I think offensive lines by and large, and Jim, I think you'd agree with me, we don't talk about them enough for fantasy purposes. Like they are so integral in, not only how certain receivers perform, but running backs, so on and so forth. The Packers offensive line this year, they lose Rasheed Walker, which I thought he was going to get this massive deal. He did not. And he basically signs for bare bones in Carolina, which makes me wonder, maybe this isn't as big a loss as I thought. They also lose Elton Jenkins, who was playing. He basically played all over for Green Bay, whatever they needed, tackle, guard, center. He played it all. He goes to Cleveland, does sign a pretty big deal. However, he's dealt with a lot of injuries over the last couple of years, and I don't know what the level that he'd be at for Green Bay this year. So what are they doing? They're plugging in former first-round pick Jordan Morgan, who they didn't know if he was going to be a tackle or a guard. Now he's playing a tackle. He's going to be the left tackle for Jordan Love this year. And I think that there's a lot of question marks on him. I usually check to the Packers and their offensive line scouting staff. I think they usually get it right. Aaron Banks is at left guard. He was not spectacular last year, but he also didn't suck. Like he was okay, right?
There's something to be said for that.
There's something to be said for that. Sean Ryan, I think, was a pleasant surprise at center, which is where he's going to be at. And then they have the second-round pick out of Maryland, the 2-year guy, Anthony Belton, who's an absolute road grader at right guard. Pass protection is kind of a little bit up in the air, but definitely can move bodies in the run game. And then their best guy, who I haven't mentioned yet, Zach Bako-Bowele, who used to be the artist formerly known as Zach Tom. He's right tackle. He's an anchor. He's going to be a stud this year. There are significant and, to me, question marks that are well worth asking. And I think if you have concerns about the Packers offensive line, I'm with you. I do too. But by and large, I would say that over the course of the last 10, 15 years, Ted Thompson, Brian Gutekunst, it always seems like they come through. The Packers seem to get their offensive line right. Even when we have doubts on it, it usually comes as at the end of the season, maybe not a strength of the team, but certainly not a weakness. And I think that's important. So anybody who's telling you about, they're really concerned about the Packers offensive line, I get why they're saying that. But I do think if you look at history, Green Bay usually comes out ahead on this. So that's just where I'll leave it with Josh Jacobs, with the Packers offensive line. We have to move on. We'll go back to New England, Jim, and we talk TreVeyon Henderson. I'm old enough to remember a weird press conference for Indianapolis Colts GM Chris Ballard talking about his draft class last year. And out of the blue, he mentions how good of a pass protector TreVeyon Henderson is. A player they didn't even draft, a player that was going to be a foe for them in the AFC. And he just starts talking about what a great pass protector TreVeyon Henderson is, which is so bizarre. And what makes it even more bizarre, TreVeyon Henderson, when he got back onto the NFL field last year, wasn't all that great of a pass protector. And in fact, Chad Graff, who covers the Patriots for The Athletic, said on Tuesday morning that the Henderson struggles for pass pro and pass blocking have continued into his sophomore year. Why is this something we need to be talking about for fantasy purposes? Because this is what kept him off the field last year, or at least part what kept him off the field last year. He couldn't protect Drake Maye. They had Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson they trusted. They didn't trust Henderson. Stevenson was out there, and Henderson was not. And Graff said in his piece for The Athletic, said, quote, he's looked a little bit like last season. Big explosive plays, but just enough mistakes in pass protection that it feels like a risk to use him on third downs, end quote. I don't know. Like, I was of the opinion, Jim, that This was just Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels penalizing a rookie for rookie's sake. Even though he might have been the best option, he led the team in rushing last year,
right?
That they weren't going to put him on the field because he's a rookie. And now I'm kind of nervous about this situation that's developing, that he has not improved on his pass blocking. Graff also said that Stevenson has, quote, done enough to keep the Patriots backfield workload at 50-50. So I read something like that and I'm of the opinion, oh, okay, so it wasn't 50-50 beforehand. Like Henderson had the leg up, but now because of the pass pro stuff and Stevenson doing enough to get him out on the field, now this makes me think that the better value for the Patriots backfield might be Stevenson rather than Henderson. Stevenson right now, running back 30, 705. But Jim, the question here, are you in or are you out on TreVeyon Henderson, running back 24 at the 507 in FFPC Big Gorilla drafts?
I have not moved my stance an inch in months out on TreVeyon Henderson. And here's my line, Balky. I'm telling people, if Mike Vrabel was coaching a fantasy football team, TreVeyon Henderson would be out there every week and he'd be raking. I know he had 1,100 scrimmage yards last year and 9 touchdowns. I understand that. But what we saw was Mike Vrabel coaches an NFL team, not a fantasy team. And the first thing Ramondre Stevenson gives you is a physical presence between the tackles that keeps the offense on schedule. And remember, it was the fact that Stevenson had 3 fumbles in 5 games. And then Coach Vrabel said, not punishing you. Well, read between the lines. That means Vrabel talked to Stevenson and he worked with him, or coach worked on ball security. Because guess what? There were about 12 games after, including playoffs. And guess who didn't fumble the rest of the way? Ramondre Stevenson. And Stevenson
catches for the Panthers so far this season. The Cardinals have taken over after a punt, Carson Beck on the field. And it looks like, I can't believe I'm saying this, it's not Trey Benson. It's not Jeremiyah Love. It's not James Conner. It's not even Tyler Allgeier. Bam Knight out on the field to take the first snap in the backfield for the Arizona Cardinals this year as they start off 1st and 10 from the 23-yard line. It is a 2-yard completion here for, again, a guy I've never heard of. There's a lot of people that I've never heard of playing in this game tonight. Kenny Yeboah. I guess I have heard of him, but it's a 4-yard catch.
Jets.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the Cardinals are on the move, as it were. We get back into fantasy, Jim. One of the, and I said this, it might have been on your Pros versus Joe stream. I said, I can throw a rock, right? And I can hit, metaphorically speaking, I can throw a rock and metaphorically hit 6 fantasy football podcasts that are telling me Jaylen Waddle is the most mispriced player in fantasy football this year, that he should be going a lot higher, that he is being undervalued by the fantasy football community, and for the purposes of this show, the high stakes community as well. Jaylen Waddle has moved up, but he's still wide receiver 20. He's still 407. He is behind Higgins, Wilson, McConkey. Jim, are you in or out on Jaylen Waddle as a mid-4th round pick right now?
Well, I was in till about 6 hours ago. Then I heard he's dealing with a soft tissue injury or something like that. That got me a little nervous. Balky, I can quantify the role that Jaylen Waddle will have, in your audience will want to hear this. Last year, it was very clear that Sean Payton wanted a yards after the catch guy. He didn't have that. So week 7 through 11, 5 straight games, Payton took Troy Franklin and he put him in the exact role he wanted to feature. Every game, we saw Franklin get 8 to 10 targets every single game. Courtland Sutton had fewer targets in all 5 games. Troy Franklin failed the experiment. 3 games were horrible yards-wise on all those. He had 2 80-yard games. When you're getting 10 targets, it's really not that big of a deal. So Payton pulled the plug on it. Pat Bryant started to play in a different role. So then the Broncos give up 1st, 3rd, and 4th round picks to get Jaylen Waddle. The role has been established. Waddle is walking into the Troy Franklin role that cannibalized Courtland Sutton, but it was a yak job. That is what Jaylen Waddle does best. That's why they brought him in. So based on that, to the moon. And here's the thing. Waddle did get beat up a lot in the last couple of years. I can tell you why. First of all, I watched how defenses played the Dolphins. First, they realized Tua couldn't drive the ball to the perimeter. So the corners started shrinking in a little bit closer to the side, from the sideline to the middle. Then they realized if Tua threw a 40-yard pass, it was a lollipop and you can run under it and beat the catch to it. So now the defender started coming down. All of a sudden, you had a compressed area whenever somebody played the Dolphins. So Jaylen Waddle was getting those schemed up passes into space, but guess what? There wasn't space. There were multiple defenders there to hit him as soon as he got the ball. In Denver, that's not the case. When Sean Payton schemes you open, you're open. They have a line. They have Sutton. They have a running game. You can't just sit in the middle of the field and pack everything in. So if this injury was just a little bit of training camp stuff, Waddle to the moon, because those targets will be there.
Sean Payton saying this afternoon that it's going to be a 4 to 5 day injury for the new wide receiver on the Broncos. Muscle tightness. Certainly, you never love to see it, but I think this is kind of best case scenario type stuff for Jaylen Waddle. I'm still in on him, and I do believe that he will buck the trend in Denver this year of Sean Payton doing Sean Payton things where he rotates everybody on his roster in. I don't know if that's going to happen this year. As far as Waddle goes, like I could see Sutton suffering some of that. Obviously, Franklin Bryant, the list goes on. You mentioned those guys right now. But I do think Waddle right now, I think he's a massive buy for me. Now,
real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So last year, Cortland Sutton was getting 16 PPR points a game. In the 5 weeks where Troy Franklin took on the yak role, Cortland Sutton was down to 10.1 PPR points. That's quantifiable as well. It was a 5 straight week sample, and Cortland Sutton was de-emphasized in the offense. So that is the model. That's what we can expect to see. And that's why Sutton's ADP, I don't think people consciously were aware of that exact breakdown, but that's why Sutton's ADP slid down as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point too regarding Sutton. There's a lot of people that are off him right now, and how Waddle and the rest of the crew there get targets distributed is going to determine whether Sutton's going to be a buy this year or a smart investment this year as well. Now, we mentioned Jaylen Waddle having the muscle strain. There's a certain substation in Northern California that is getting a lot. And by the way, there's a Twitter account now, or an X account, I should say, about the electrical substation for San Francisco. And it's hilarious. It's a great follow if you can follow it. But there is a good point to be made regarding Mike Evans right now. This came on what would have been Monday afternoon. The quad strain that Mike Evans suffered is very minor, according to Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network and ESPN, obviously now. They had like 20-some players miss practice yesterday. It was incredible at what they're missing. Wide receiver Mike Evans is now going to be 32 years old this year. He might miss a few days, but a guy like this, you don't really worry about him missing training camp as well. He had a really good first start of camp, first few days of camp. And certainly there's going to be a lot of people. Again, another polarizing player, Jim, when we talk about FFPC Big Gorilla. Right now, we're looking at Mike Evans going off the board on average as wide receiver 26 at the 508. But he has gone as high as the 405. So the believers in Mike Evans are still going to keep drafting him. Let's not use his high point. Let's use his ADP. FFPC Big Gorilla 508. Tell me if you're in or out on Mike Evans right now at that price.
0 chance I have 1 share of Mike Evans.
Wow.
0 chance. Balky, to me, this is the biggest layup of the offseason. This is before the injury. You'll hear me talk over and over about age and injury recovery, and players, once they start getting injured, it's a snowball effect as you age. Now, you said he's 32. Well, guess what? 2 weeks from today, guess what he is? 33.
Yeah.
So now that's a completely different bucket of player. And we see Devontae Adams, 2 years of hamstring injuries, but these aren't hamstring. But let's go further. First of all, it was a small sample last year, but there were about 4 games before Mike Evans got hurt. He was averaging 11.3 PPR points and 47 yards with Baker Mayfield. Small sample, I get it, but those weren't Mike Evans numbers. He may have been on the decline already. But here's the thing. Evans had missed 8 games in 10 years. He missed 12 in the last 2. This is the poster child of age and injury recovery. And then we go back. Other Hall of Fame receivers about this exact same age. Julio Jones. Oh, he's going to go to Tennessee. He's going to light it up there. Nope, 33 years old. He was done. DeAndre Hopkins switched teams. 33 years old. These are two Hall of Fame receivers, a little bit different than Evans, but in some ways they were boundary receivers. Done. Why is Mike Evans any different here? And my answer is he's not. And whatever injury he had now, whether it's substation, it's real. Again, this is age-related stuff, and this is not going away. He's not playing a healthy season because he hasn't done so, and the odds of him doing it are slim. The other thing is, I know that Brandon Ayuk ran a lot of different routes in San Francisco and was successful, but the Shanahan system is largely predicated on yards after the catch. Mike Evans, he's not a yards after the catch guy, bottom 5th percentile last year, but he's more of a boundary ball winner. And if he's lost anything, it's going to be a problem. And when they get in the red zone, all right, he's going to get 25 touchdowns. I'm joking, but Kittle will be healthy at some point. Kittle's getting the ball in the red zone. Christian McCaffrey's getting the ball in the red zone. So it's not like, oh, it's all Mike Evans when they're inside the 10-yard line. No, they potentially have 3 guys they're going to use. Evans will get some of that. So I am completely out on Mike Evans.
I think, listen, I'm glad, and this is the great thing about Jim Coventry, everybody. He has convictions, and he practices his convictions. And if you don't believe me, just wait till the next segment, because we're going to get into a lot of stuff there. But no, I think that's important. And I think it's also important to understand, let's say you were borderline with Mike Evans, and now you hear Jim talk about him, you're like, oh, God, I should be out on him. Well, look at the other receivers that are going around that same spot. DJ Moore, Christian Watson, Devontae Adams, Rome Odunze, Jameson Williams, not really slouches there. So if you want to be out on Evans, maybe it's an easy pivot to go to some of those other receivers. Jim, if you were pivoting off of Mike Evans at that spot and you wanted to go with a different receiver, who are you most likely to go with? DJ Moore, Christian Watson?
Mentioned DJ Moore. I'm going to stop you
that's
right
the guy?
there.
Okay.
And look, DJ Moore, I did not think that what Ben Johnson said in May last year was accurate. He said, "Oh, I don't like DJ Moore's body language." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever. He's a superstar receiver. Once you see him play, you'll change your tune." It never changed. DJ Moore had 85 targets last year. But I'll tell you this about DJ Moore: they had to throw him the ball in the second half of the season, and he had 6 games of at least 17.7 PPR points. Those are big games. 6 of them. He still can play. He has not lost a thing. But Ben Johnson is into preciseness. DJ Moore is not the precise route runner. He just gets open. That's not good enough for Ben Johnson. I understand it now. But now in Buffalo, oh my goodness, who is better? There's a few guys, but who's better once a play breaks down than DJ Moore? Think about that play against Green Bay when that big touchdown in week, was it 17?
Yeah, 18.
That's DJ Moore. That's exactly what he does. And what does Josh Allen do as well as anybody not named Patrick Mahomes pre-ACL? Buys 8 seconds of time waiting for somebody to get open. And he doesn't have an outside receiver at all. For 2 years, he has DJ Moore now. And think about this. The Bills are going to throw more this year. Sean McDermott's gone. That team had been aging out on talent for years, and McDermott still made them respectable. The aged out talent, that is going to be a problem. Nobody's doing what Sean McDermott did. This team's going to have to score points, and DJ Moore is going to be playing as he does. He doesn't miss games. He maybe 1 or 2 in his career. This is going to be the DJ Moore that we should have expected. This is the best situation by far he's ever been in.
I can't remember the exact analogy, Jim, I came up with a few weeks ago on this show, but I said that Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams were the strict Catholic nun school teachers, where they are slapping you on the wrist if you are just this far off in your route, or not at that exact spot in your route where you need to be at that certain time. Whereas Josh Allen is the hippie jazz musician, right? And him and Joe Brady are like, maybe smoking a little weed, whatever, but like playing the saxophone, playing the piano, playing the bass, slapping the bass, whatever. Like, yeah, man. Just do your thing. I'll find you. And not to say any of these guys smoke marijuana, but I'm just saying that the point here is these guys they will find each other, right? They will find each other. DJ Moore down there somewhere, as it were, with Josh Allen. And I think that there is a lot to like about Moore's new spot in Buffalo, and I don't know if the fantasy community and the high stakes community has responded in the way that they probably should have. It's been a response, but it's been underwhelming. And I wonder if DJ Moore could be a potential league winner. We might get into that in the next segment as well. By the way, DJ Moore right now, if you want to look at his FFPC baby gorilla ADP, it stands at wide receiver 24 at the 506. What's the baby gorilla? It is a carbon copy of the big gorilla, just with a $125 entry as opposed to $350. You ever wanted to play high stakes fantasy football, but the barrier was too high? The baby gorilla is for you. You can compete for a 6-figure grand prize. Set your lineups, place your bids, manage your teams throughout the season. MyFFPC.com is where to go, MyFFPC.com. And if you're with me and you think DJ Moore is being underdrafted, well, you can take advantage of that at the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. Okay, Jim, let's get into this. The guy I just traded for in that AJ Brown trade I mentioned was the centerpiece coming back to me as far as what I need this year, DK Metcalf. And I'm not a Metcalf guy. I'll be quite frankly, I think that Michael Pittman is the guy I like on that offense this year. Mm-hmm. I think his game jives much more so with Aaron Rodgers than Metcalf does. Metcalf basically had his worst season as a pro last year, outside of his rookie season in his first year in Pittsburgh with Aaron Rodgers. He's wide receiver 35 at the 709. I'd much rather take Jordan Tyson. I'd much rather take Pittman. I'd much rather take Godwin. I have been taking Alec Pierce over DK Metcalf at that price, but I'll give you the floor. Are you in or out on DK Metcalf this year?
So Kings Classic, I drafted 14 teams, 3 flexes. The board is dried up by the 6th round, and you're calling it a day. DK Metcalf is actually like as close to a do not draft list as I possibly can have. And I'm in this 7th round, and I have I need a receiver, and who's sitting there with DK Metcalf, and I reluctantly take him.
Jim, just give us some context. Who else was on the board at wide receiver at that point besides Metcalf?
Oh my gosh, I wish the draft was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
been in too many of them.
Okay,
it was dry. The board was done. It literally, I had no option. Whatever it was, because nobody else wanted him either. And so now I'm in the worst spot in the world in that now I got to think about having DK Metcalf. And then I talk myself into a better position on him, which is a terrible thing to do. But here's the position, and it actually makes sense. Why didn't I like DK Metcalf? Because you were right, Balky. Because Pittman's the possession receiver. We see Aaron Rodgers turtling. As soon as somebody comes, he turtles. He doesn't want to get hit anymore. He wants that ball out instantaneously. That's why Kenny Gainwell caught 73 passes. That's why the tight ends caught a bunch. Warren caught 40. They had no possession receiver. So, yes, Pittman is going to eat. But the more I started to think about it after I reluctantly drafted Metcalf, I'm thinking about, wait a minute. Because defenses now actually have a wide receiver they have to deal with, there are going to be some play action shots. They're going to be fast acting and over the top. Here's what Metcalf did in the first 7 games, or first half of last season. He averaged 14.7 PPR points. If you had Metcalf through week 7 last year, you were really happy with that. It was a very good performance. What did defenses do after that? They realized there was no possession receiver. So defenses bracketed Metcalf. And therefore, Rodgers had nowhere to go because he wanted out fast and there were too many defenders. So everything stopped other than the Baltimore game where Baltimore, for some reason, single covered him. And then Metcalf got 3 boundary balls. So now with Pittman there, defenses can't just bracket Metcalf and call it a day. So I do think there's going to be shots. I don't expect Metcalf to be a big deal every week, but I do believe he is better than we thought he was going to be. He's not on my target list. But at the point now, if I redrafted again, I wouldn't view him as the do not draft player I once did, just a player I'd prefer not to have for week-to-week consistency.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the consistency is a big thing too. Like maybe hashtag better in best ball is the way to go with DK Metcalf on this. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like I feel like, you think about a guy like him in Buffalo, right? Or just any other spot that, or like in Kansas City would be, and I'm obviously spitballing here with some of the great, Washington would be another one. Some of the great like innovators at the quarterback position that we have in the NFL right now. I think Metcalf could be better served there than in Pittsburgh, but he's stuck in Pittsburgh. He's getting money. But we don't have to like him for fantasy. I'm out on him. You are obviously out on him for the most part.
Yes, I'm out
as well. Like, and I'm with you too. Like I've been there in those drafts. Like it's been a long time since I've drafted a 14-teamer, but I've been there in those spots where I'm like, God, I don't like any of these guys, but because, how far it stretches with 14 teams. You really have to get your structure right, and sometimes that might mean jumping on a grenade like DK Metcalf.
Balky, I could tell you who was on the board. I actually pulled up a draft.
Oh yeah,
board
perfect.
Right now.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
Yeah, let me find my team. I was picking in the 10th spot, and there's Metcalf. Okay, so the players that were. I got sniped on Josh Downs. I was hoping to get him. Jaden Reed was taken. These were the receivers that went after Metcalf. Alec Pearson, I'm worried because of the ankle surgery. That's the only reason. Otherwise, taking Pierce. Xavier Worthy, no thanks. Jaden Higgins, Jacoby Myers, I took in the next round, which is fine. Concepcion and Dobbs. That's who was on the board at that time with Metcalf.
I think like I'm less concerned about the ankle than you are. So I probably would have taken Pierce at that point,
yes,
but it would have been a coin flip between Pierce and Metcalf. Like Metcalf, for sure over all those other guys. And then you still get Myers the next round. You still get Myers the next round, which is fantastic.
Right, that did help. That softened the blow a bit.
We will stay in the AFC North here, and I want to ask you about suddenly a polarizing tight end in Harold Fannin. It's weird, but there's been a lot of discourse in the fantasy industry, on fantasy Twitter, and in high-stakes leagues that apparently Fannin might be going a little bit too high, a little bit too much for his britches right now. He stands at the FFPC Big Gorilla as tight end 6 at the 5'10". That is smack dab in between Kyle Pitts and Tucker Kraft. Are you in or out on the Browns sophomore tight end, Jim Coventry?
The cost has me concerned, and I'd rather have Sam Laporta, who goes to the tight end 8, coming back healthy from a back situation. Here was what I thought about Fannin. Wonderful player, extremely talented. What I noticed, though, was Cleveland's offensive line was as bad as a line that we've seen. There have been some bad lines. They were right there with one of the worst ones there were. And the quarterbacks were really problematic. And I think just getting the ball to somebody fast was part of the game plan. So I think Fannin definitely was in the right place at the right time. Remember, 25 of Fannin's 107 targets came in 2 games when David Njoku was out at the end of the season. 162 of his 731 yards in those 2 games with 25 targets. Now you bring in Concepcion and Denzel Boston, and they're talking up Jerry Jeudy. The offensive line, in my mind, was addressed. They're not going to be very good, but they're going to not be a train wreck like they were last year. And all that tells me is they don't have to dump the ball to the tight end every down out of fear of the play not getting run. And I think Quinshon Judkins is in a healthier situation. I think the offense is healthier. And I think Fannin will not be overly relied on targets. But again, I think we skewed his numbers because of the 2-game stretch late in the season. And I think, again, he's going to be fine, not tight end 7 fine.
The FFPC Dynasty and Empire Dynasty startups are off and running right now. And as you could imagine, with a tight end premium format like that and Harold Fannin's age, he ain't coming cheap right now. If you want to go in that format, he's tight end 6. He's going off the board at the 4'10", right behind Tucker Kraft, but ahead of Kyle Pitts, ahead of Sam Laporta, ahead of Kenyon Sadiq and Isaiah Likely. If you think that is too low, or you want to take advantage of some other values, check out the FFPC Dynasty and Empire Dynasty startups. They start off at $100. They go up to $5,000. You can play fantasy football year-round, every single day of the year. FFPC Dynasty leagues, 2,200 of them. None have ever folded in the decade plus that we've been offering them. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Take Harold Fannin or don't. It's your dynasty team. You craft it the way you want. Those empires are pretty cool too. You can set aside, we will set aside half the pot each and every year. And anybody who wins that league 2 years in a row gets not only that year's prize, but that empire prize that grows every single year as well. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Okay, Jim, let's move on and talk about Mark Andrews, guy who's getting kind of a resurgence in FFPC ADP. I look at the Big Gorilla ADP on him right now. And over the course of the last 3 days, he has ascended to tight end 14 at 902. I shouldn't say ascended because he's been right around there for a while. He's in the Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Goedert, Chig Okonkwo tier. What do you make of Andrews playing on a team that's going to have not only a healthy Lamar Jackson this year, but a team that is going to have a new offensive coordinator in Declan Doyle, which I think you can look at it a couple of different ways. If this is a good or a bad thing, how are you looking at Andrews at the 902 right now, Jim?
So Mark Andrews, I want to point this out. I was in the middle of the 8th round, and I know the pros versus Joes will talk about later, but I have to bring up Andrews because I was in the middle of the 8th round, picking 6th, and on the way back, I was fully expecting to make Andrews my tight end 1, and the pick before me, Joe Bednar, took him. So I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I took Travis Kelce, and I was fine with that, but I really wanted Andrews. And Mark Andrews is an interesting case study here because I think this is going to be an extremely good season for him. We have to look at the quick history of Mark Andrews. The year in 2023, remember, he had that season. He played 10 games and he broke his ankle. He was on pace for another 900-yard season and about 10 touchdowns. So he was fine. 2024 is the year he started out with that car accident. And so he ends up getting 11 touchdowns, but still 673 yards. Great. Last year, Lamar was hurt. The first couple of games, they were making him block more. Isaiah Likely's thing. I think we throw last year out. But here's what you need to know. The Ravens last year, they let Likely go. They let Kohler go. They paid Andrews 3 years on a new deal he'll be 31 to start the season, but they paid him 3. So they don't think he's lost anything. And now, you don't trust Bateman. I don't trust Elijah Serrata. I don't trust Jacoby Lane. Andrews is still the number 2 in this offense, and Lamar loves him. And Declan Doyle, like you said, that system, Coach Laporta and Loveland, Mark Andrews isn't those players, but he can be weaponized. So, yes, Mark Andrews is one of the steals of the drafts, and you love that FFPC with that tight end premium. Andrews is going to get that bump from that 61 to 70 targets you've seen in the last 3 years. You're going to be looking back in that 90 target range. You're going to regret not picking him.
I think that Andrews is going to be one of these players, especially when we talk about, like, Darren Armani was on the last Pros versus Joe's stream where he was drafting in it on Tuesday night, and he brought up Rob Tomasino, longtime FFPC player, who won Pros versus Joe's last year, and he read off the 4 tight ends that Rob had on his roster, and they were all not good, right? Like they I shouldn't say they were all not good. They were all just like, really? Those were his tight ends, tight end premium format, and he won the whole thing with that? Yes, he did. And I think Andrews could be one of those guys this year where you look at it and it's just like, oh, this is not attractive at all. This is not a sexy pick, but it is a very efficient pick, and it's a pick that's going to help you put up a lot of points this year as well. So interesting stuff there. Do we have – no, we don't have time. Okay, if we come back to this at the end, we will. But I want to get your thoughts on your Pros versus Joe's draft that you just did this past week, Jim. That's going to be our final segment. We'll take our final break of the show. Jim Coventry from RotoWire.com, drafting in the Pros versus Joe's this week. How did his team turn out? More importantly, how does he think his team turned out? You'll find out next on FFPC Insider Access. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
What's up, everyone? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm, and I want to talk to you about my very favorite format ever, and that's best ball. Yes, we all love to draft. Drafting is the best part of fantasy football. But if you do too many drafts in too many real leagues, you end up with too many lineups, too many trades, too many waivers. It's a lot of work. There's a solution to that, and it's called best ball. You go in, you draft your team, and then you're done. You don't need to set a lineup, no trades. The algorithm optimizes your lineup for you every single week, so you can draft as many teams as you want. And the best place to play right now is myffpc.com, where they have the $125 buy-in with a $400,000 prize, and also a $35 buy-in super flex league with a $400,000 prize. Get in over at myffpc.com. Use promo code ALARM. Or when you deposit for the first time, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. And you can start drafting teams now and draft all summer long without having to worry about lineups or trades or any of that. Get in there at myffpc.com and start drafting best ball teams now through the rest of the summer.
We're drafting a main event team on FFPC, $2,000 entry team, grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
Well, the FFPC main event is super important. I realize I have not given my quarterback public service announcement. If you feel these one quarterback leagues have taken over and they have too much of a stranglehold on the fantasy industry, and that quarterbacks, the most important position on a real NFL field, are not getting their just due. Take advantage of the largest Superflex best ball tournament of its kind, the FFPC Superflex best ball tournament. $35 to enter. You can win a $100,000 grand prize. And these quarterbacks, they are first-round picks. They are second-round picks. They are third-round picks. It is the great equalizer in everything we offer at the FFPC. And you too can join it right now at myffpc.com and win $100,000 off just a $35 entry fee, and you're supporting the quarterback position at the same time. All right, that's my PSA there. Jim, we have to get back to you in your Pros versus Joe's team. Remind me again, was this Sunday night or Monday night you drafted this team?
Tuesday. It's been forever ago, and it was a week ago Tuesday. It wasn't even this past Tuesday.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So this would have been Tuesday night. This was draft number 3, July 28th.
Yes.
Is when you drafted this team. And you were at the 6th spot, I want to say.
Correct.
On this. Yeah. So you're at the 6th spot. And again, for anybody who's not familiar with Pros versus Joes, this is a 20-round draft. Best ball slim, no kickers, no defenses. The winner of this league, each individual league, all 7, will get free 2027 FFPC Main Event entries, which are $2,200 value. Second place gets a pair of socks, courtesy of my HSFF Hour co-host, Harold Elliott. But first place is what everybody's shooting for. And so I do think we have seen some more home run swings, some more like I don't want to get a single, I don't want to get double, I want to get the home run here. And Jim, you have backed up your convictions on what you've been telling people to do with Omarion Hampton to a new level here, where you took him as the 6th overall pick of this draft. If anybody is doubting that you are maybe just a quasi believer in Hampton, they see what you did here and they know you are all in on one Omarion Hampton this year.
I did notice, because I immediately patched on to the high stakes fantasy hour so to let you guys grill me, because I knew it'd be a point of contention. And you guys were always very wonderful to me as usual, didn't really rip into me as bad as I should. But I also noticed in the rest of the Pros versus Joe's drafts, Hampton didn't make it past the turn. I thought that was interesting.
No, he did not. You're right. Yeah, he did not. And maybe that's a commentary on like what the industry is just viewing him at this point. No longer a 1-2 turn pick, no longer a second round pick, just a bona fide back end of the first round pick, Jim.
So what I say about Hampton is this. First of all, yeah, he had a freak injury. He broke his ankle last year. He was still averaging 15.9 PPR points behind a terrible offensive line. They had no tackles. The interior was horrible. It could not have been a worst case scenario for Hampton. And yet he was still really good for fantasy. Well, you come to this year and the 2 tackles, look, I'm going to assume they're healthy and they're going to stay healthy. Alt and Slater. They bring in Tyler Allgeier at center, who may not be Superman, but he can move in those zone schemes. He's very useful. 2nd round pick on Slaughter. Cole Strange, not a great guard, but he can move a little bit. So you bring in Mike McDaniel. And first of all, some people are saying, well, Hampton's not a good outside runner. Hampton averaged 5.1 yards per carry on outside zone runs with no offensive line last year. So don't tell me he can't run outside. And the other thing is now the other people are saying, well, they have the guy for Keaton Mitchell. They have Keaton Mitchell. Yeah. They're going to be sharing work. Devon Achane was 188 pounds and he was getting 350 touches. If you think Mike McDaniel is going to give that many touches to Achane and have a 220-pound Hampton and say, you know what, I'm going to get Keaton Mitchell in there. Mitchell will get some work, of course. Jonathan Taylor gives up 20% of the snaps. So first of all, let's get those all off the table. Hampton's not catching the 88 passes that Devon Achane caught because he's not that guy, but will he catch 40? Certainly. But in this scheme, defenses cannot sell off to stop the run. They don't have Tua Tagovailoa. They have Justin Herbert. Can make every throw in the book. They can stretch the field any which way they want. Teams cannot load up to stop Hampton, or they will pay dearly for it. And the league is about stopping the pass. Hampton could not be in a better spot this year. I will draft him aggressively. Beginning of the draft season, I had him and Gentry like right close to each other. Hampton is now my running back 3, and I'm not looking back.
Yeah, there's a lot of love for Hampton. And quite frankly, you can't really poke holes in his prospect profile. There's a lot of love for him and the offense and the OC and a lot of the things that you had mentioned just now. And by the way, I'll just piggyback on this. Not only is Tyler Allgeier from my neck of the woods here in Wisconsin as a former Badger, He is a third cousin of my mother-in-law. So I have to root for Tyler Biotish and blocking for one Omarion Hampton this year, which, if you believe Jim Coventry, is going to lead you into a lot of high stakes and fantasy football wins. And quite frankly, not even according to Jim Coventry, according to a lot of people. But Jim is he is driving the Hampton hype train right now. I want to flip it over to another pick that you had made in the 7th round of this Pros versus Joes draft. And as much as I want to give you credit when you go out of your way to get your guy, because I always think getting your guy, that's what fantasy football is all about. I don't necessarily know if you got your guy here at the 706, but Jim, you took advantage of some value falling to you. In the FFPC Best Ball Tournament over the last 3 days, Parker Washington normally goes at the 609. He's gone as high as the 512, but you cash in on him at the 706. A good value here. Was he part of the draft plans, or when you were on the clock in the 7th round, were you just looking at him as a value you could not pass up?
Balky, full disclosure to everyone out there, I have my draft board. I'm usually comfortable with 4 or 5 players at every spot in the draft. This Pros versus Joes group was so good. Usually those 4 or 5 players were all gone. That doesn't happen to me. And I draft in the super, super tough leagues. This specific draft, my players were not on the board. I love Chris Olave. Had no intentions of taking him. He was the best on the board. Same thing. We got to Parker Washington. Parker Washington was not target. I wanted Marvin Harrison. He went before him by 4 picks. But he was the end of a tier. But I'll say this about Parker Washington. He was not a fluke. 30-year breakout guy. Liam Cohen. And I said this last year, Liam Cohen took a half a season to figure out what Trevor Lawrence was. First, he ran an offense, and then he realized Trevor Lawrence is not a good perimeter passer. He's not a good downfield perimeter passer. So what do? We get the ball in the middle of the field. Once Travis Hunter was hurt, Parker Washington got unleashed as the explosive middle of the field slot element. Jacoby Myers was traded for, plays the outside, but runs a lot of in-breakers. And Brenton Strange was healthy. Those are the skill set of Trevor Lawrence. I mentioned earlier, and I'll repeat, Parker Washington offers them an explosive element in the middle of the field. The other 2 pass catchers in that part of the field don't. Parker Washington will continue to play extreme well. His target share in the last 4 games, including the playoffs, was through the roof. They're not turning that back. He is a perfect match for what Trevor Lawrence does, and Liam Cohen is not a foolish man, and he realizes exactly what Washington brings to the offense. Didn't target him. Pleased as heck that I got him.
That's how kind of my thing is too. I spent the majority of drafting season, and I've said this on a lot of podcasts, that I just wanted pieces of this Jacksonville offense, whether it was Tootin at their price, right? I wasn't going to overdraft any of these guys, but Tootin, Rodriguez, Hunter to a certain extent, Myers, Washington, Thomas, Lawrence. I mean, all these guys, every draft I tried to watch, I wanted to leave with one Jaguar. And Parker Washington's probably been the guy I've drafted most out of all the Jacksonville players this year, and I feel really good about it. And certainly you cashed in on some value here as well. Speaking of value, you also got value, Jim, in the following round in the mid-8th at the 807. We talked about him earlier. Travis Kelce is your selection there. Now, I should have it in front of me. Was he your first tight end, or did you already have a tight end off the board?
He was my first tight end. And again, picking in the middle. Very smart drafters, FFPC, tight end premium. They made sure that they were near the end. They were proactively getting their tight end because they knew that was their last shot to get that tier of tight end. So every time I wanted a tight end, anyone I wanted was long off the board. So again, we are pliable in drafts. You go in with a plan, and when that plan breaks down, you just pivot. And my pivot was that was the first time there was a tight end available that I was willing to take on my roster at cost.
By the way, I should mention, too, we have a pair of rushing touchdowns in the Hall of Fame game to talk about. Corey Kiner is the first touchdown of the NFL season here as he gives the Cardinals a 7-0 lead after Carson Beck leads the Cardinals on a 98-yard scoring drive. God bless him. And then former Packer and the current mayor of Door County, Wisconsin, or I don't know what the county is that you have, like the chairman, the constable. I don't know, but whatever it is, everybody in Door County, Wisconsin, which is just north of Green Bay, loves this guy. AJ Dillon gets in the end zone. He's got 2 carries for 5 yards and a touchdown. 7-7 with 10:56 to go in the first half in the Hall of Fame game. Travis Kelce was your first tight end. I'm assuming this dude was your second tight end. At the 11:06, you get a piece of that Chargers passing game that we had talked about in hour number 1 tonight, Jim. Oronde Gadsden, a player that many high-stakes players, pundits, what have you, have said that his value, given where it was at in January and February, has been absolutely train wrecked by the decisions that the Chargers have made. Charlie Kolar, David Njoku, it's such a crowded room to catch passes there. I mean, obviously Hampton, but then Trey Harris, Ed McConkey, Quentin Johnston, the possibility of Keenan Allen coming back, although I don't think it's likely, but it's still a possibility. Gadsden at the 11:06, was this more of like a pick to win? Was this more of like a home run swing? Tell me a little bit about this Gadsden decision that you made in the mid-11th.
Balky, I am so glad you asked me this question. I try to offer a cheat code every year. Last year it was play running backs because the light linebackers, 2 on the field, injuries are going to be low. My cheat code this year, Sean McVay, go to a different team. 13 personnel, 3 tight ends in the field. Lazy analysis, 30% of the time they ran it. Total lie. It was true technically. They didn't start running it till week 9 after their bye. They were running it 46 to 50% of the time. Why? It's a math advantage against the defense. The defenses cannot break it because they don't have the personnel to deal with it. And teams are unwilling to sell out and bring everybody down. So when the Chargers brought in David Njoku, Charlie Kolar, they also have 2 fullbacks, Alec Ingold. This team is going to run an exponentially high number of heavy personnel. I expect quite a bit of the 3 tight ends. So you have to have Njoku and you have to have Kolar. Njoku's aging and he hasn't been the same player in 3 years. Kolar, they could talk him up as a receiver all day long. Please, fine, whatever. He's going to get 20 catches and call it a day. Who is the move tight end? It's very clearly Oronde Gadsden. There are going to be a lot of plays where the Chargers have 1 receiver on the field because when you have 3 tight ends, you only have 1 receiver. Just remember, Mike McDaniel 2 years ago, he had Tyreek Hill, he had Jaylen Waddle. But who was it? It was the tight end, Jonnu Smith, 80 catches, 800 yards, 8 touchdowns. He was rolling 8s with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. What do you think Mike McDaniel's doing here? Do you think he's really weaponizing Kolar and Njoku? No, he's weaponizing the guy who had a 94-yard average over a 4-week stretch last year. He is going to be salivating when he has these 3 tight end sets and he can move Gadsden into space. Nobody's seeing this because people don't understand the trend. And the Chargers are uniquely equipped to play that level of heavy personnel.
Kolar was a big-time pass-catching tight end in college. He has not found the same level of success in the pros. And I can't help but wonder, and you kind of touched on this, but I'll just drive the point home. Joe Alt is back. Rashawn Slater is back. And I would contend, maybe this isn't a popular opinion, but because of Kolar and Njoku's blocking exploits and the lack of Gadsden's blocking exploits and the fact that Gadsden is pretty much inarguably the most athletic tight end of the 3, I wonder if that works for him. The fact that Gadsden is such a prolific pass catcher and the fact that Kolar and Njoku are really good blockers. I wonder if, as long as Alt and Slater are healthy, that this means more Gadsden out there. I don't know. It's something to, and I don't know if I've formulated a hard opinion on this yet, but it's something that I'll be thinking about over the course of the next month before the NFL season starts here. The preseason starts tonight, obviously, and then we'll get real life football going on here shortly. The last player I want to ask you about with pros versus Joes here, Aaron Jones is normally running back 41. He goes at the 11:03. You got him at the 12:07 tonight. I always have to ask when it's stuff like this, Jim. Was he ever in your draft plan, or was this a player that was just too good to pass up on? And maybe the way that you answer this is also a commentary on how you view the Vikings running back situation in 2026.
So I did draft 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds, Hampton, Barkley, and Montgomery. So I'm pretty well set there in terms of if they get hurt, they get hurt. But they have different bye weeks, so I'm kind of covered there. But it became a point in the draft where if there was one of the few running backs that I thought could contribute in a best ball league that late, Aaron Jones just happened to be there, and I felt like he was the best value. I didn't like any of the wide receivers at that point. I already had 2 tight ends. I had 2 quarterbacks. So it was a pick where he was on the board, and he was definitely a player I wanted. I wanted Stribling. I got him later at receiver. But the thing with Aaron Jones was interesting, and I really don't get it because he is aging. He is in decline as a runner, but they paid him. And And that surprised me a lot. And they are talking about, like, the beat writer, Alec Lewis, I believe, from The Athletic, is saying that right now they're viewing him as their lead guy. Will the wheels fall off at some point? Probably. But if he's out there in an offense that's run by Kevin O'Connell, the offensive line's good, they got to worry about Jefferson and Addison and Hockenson. Yeah, I think this is a running back 4 super late in the best ball draft. He'll get hurt at some point, most likely, but he could get 3 or 4 games where he might be in my lineup.
Yeah. And that might be all you need, right? From a best ball standpoint, that can really carry you. Aaron Jones, your selection at the 1207. The overall, and I know you talked about Kelsey, you talked about Gadsden. The only other tight end you added to this group was TJ Hockenson in the 13th round, which is obviously a real life teammate of Aaron Jones for the Minnesota Vikings. You were, I'm verifying this right now. I believe you were the Jim, you were the last player to take a tight end in this draft. And you added, after Kelsey, Gadsden, and Hockenson. Are you concerned at all about I should say, what's your level of concern, if any, about the tight ends that you have put together on this team, carrying you to not only a 2027 main event team for free in this league if you win it, but perhaps the overall as well?
I may be a crazy man. I may have had hair someday, but I went in with the plan. I wanted Gadsden and I wanted Hockenson. And I'll tell you a little quick story about Hockenson, and I'm going to say it this way. TJ Hockenson in 2022 played for 2 teams, the Lions and the Vikings, and he was over 900 yards. 2023, he only played 15 games. He had over 900 yards, and he tore his ACL. We knew 2024 was a lost season. Coming back midseason from an ACL, he didn't have that surgery till January 31st. We knew he'd be bad that year, and he was. Last year, J.J. McCarthy was a quarterback. Everybody was bad. TJ Hockenson is 29 years old this season. He still is. He may not be that 900-yard player, but we have to excuse the year he back from the ACL. We have to throw away J.J. McCarthy. How is he not a 700-yard receiver? And I get the Kyler Murray thing. They're going to boot action and roll him out. So it's not like Murray can't see the middle. They're going to be designed rollouts. Hockenson, look, Trey McBride did really well with Kyler Murray. So it's not like he can't throw to a tight end. And I'm not comparing Hawk to him. Hawk's getting the ball here. And I just think that late, and again, in the best ball league, he is going to have 5 or 6 weeks. They're going to be very, very useful. And he might even have more utility than that.
Jim, this was tremendous. And by the way, for a fantastic show, we have to close it with a fantastic performance that we are witnessing from Carson Beck in the Hall of Fame game tonight. We already have Derek NZ6IF pointing out that Beck is looking really good. 9:38 to go in the second quarter. Oh, by the way, that's Derek Greer, a longtime FFPC player. Derek, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize your YouTube name, but Derek Greer, who's been a guest on many of my shows before, pointing out Carson Beck, Jim, 10 of 12 for 134 yards and a touchdown. He just hit Jalen Brooks for a 49-yard catch down the sideline, and then hit Simi Fehoko for a 5-yard touchdown catch. The Cardinals now lead the Panthers 14-7. What's the takeaway? Oh, I'm not at all concerned about Carson Beck managing this team in December anymore.
Greg Cosell would tell you, create the bust right now.
Right, exactly. Jim, listen, I'm going to give you an opportunity to do this once again. For a must follow on X, go to Jim Coventry NFL for everything he's producing. The multiple threads a day, the multiple X posts a day that is going to help you become a better fantasy football player and more prepared when it comes to your draft, as well as all the articles you're writing for RotoWire. And if anybody is looking to get a membership to RotoWire, like I do, make sure that you're giving them that discount code tonight.
Yeah, the code is Jim for 35% off. We usually don't do that. It's a significant discount. My rankings and the rankings of our other experts for the first time ever are live on the site. You'll have those for whatever league you need. Let's win our leagues together. I hope I can be part of your process.
And I think the other thing to point out too, like, with everybody you guys have added, Theo Greminger and Ian Hartitz and like the force is becoming complete at RotoWire right now. You guys are making waves, definitely at the forefront of the fantasy football content conversation. You guys have had some articles of like your favorite sleeper of the year, your favorite bust of the year, or whatever. Those are worth the membership like by themselves. So check it out at at rotowire.com. The promo code is Jim, and you get 35% off your RotoWire subscription. Jim, this was a pleasure, man. I know I will talk with you again soon. I will definitely see you in draft rooms for the duration of the season. I will see you in the off season as you are grinding out content, getting everybody ready for 2027 drafts. But I will leave you with this. Good luck in Pros versus Joes. Good luck in all your 2026 exploits. And the thing I always say to every guest on this show, keep up the great work. Thanks so much for carving out 2 hours of your time tonight. I'll let you go enjoy the Hall of Fame game.
Always a pleasure. Appreciate all the work you do, Balky, FFPC, even Darren Armani, throw him in there. But Thank you. It's an honor to be on your show. Thank you.
That is Jim Coventry. I want to thank him and our producer, Sean Engel, tonight. We'll be back at 7:00 p.m. next Thursday with a live stream draft. Theo Greminger is going to be drafting a $125 FFPC Best Ball Tournament draft at 7:30 Eastern time. So him, and then of course, if you've been watching Pros versus Joes, the 14-time FFPC champ Dave Tripoli. Theo and I will banter about, get Theo's thoughts prior to his draft at 7:30, and then he will draft for a $400,000 grand prize at 7:30, and we'll cover it for the duration on the FFPC Insider Access. For Sean Engel, for Jim Coventry, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access. Enjoy the Hall of Fame game, everybody, and we will talk with you again at 7:00 p.m. next Thursday night.